Afternoon, guys. Well, it's afternoon for us. I don't know if it's afternoon when you're listening, but this is season 1, episode 2 with the wonderful Kat Henry. So I'm just going to give her an introduction that she absolutely deserves. So I've got my notes in front of me. I'm just going to have a look at the little rundown of the history that you've had within pageants, which is incredible. So let's start at let's start at the top and work backwards on my list in no particular order. So of course we have the 2014 Ms. British Beauty Curve. Now, if I get any of these wrong, please let me know. You were top 10 Galaxy 2017. You represented Miss England you represented England at Miss International Curve and won. And then, of course, you are our Ms. Great Britain 21-22 Ms. Great Britain, which is absolutely like fantastic. And you were the first black plus size woman of color. Is that right? Have I said that right?
Kind of, yeah.
To win in its history, which is phenomenal. Have I missed anything out?
No, you haven't missed anything out in terms of my pageantry rundown. But yeah, there's that's a pretty extensive list when you say it like that. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's awesome. So welcome to the GB Pageantry HQ podcast. Reason why I'm doing this podcast, you might have heard from when I was speaking to Charlotte, is that obviously Saffron, having been in and around the pageant world for a little while, and has both been the national directors for Miss Great Britain, I'm playing catch up, so trying to learn some stuff and trying to have interesting conversations with interesting people within the pageant world. So of course, no better conversation to have than ours. So we've got when you sent through your list, your bio, and the things that you've achieved, and also the list of like challenges that you've had. I'll be honest, I didn't even know really where to start. I really didn't. So I thought I'd start with our. So myself and Saffron came up with the tagline of Miss Great Britain really is celebrating the diversity in women's excellence. So what does that mean to you?
I find that really quite an empowering statement in itself. Pageantry gets a really bad name, and I think it often gets tarred with the impression that people think that it's all quite aesthetic driven. It's only kind of driven by people that are, I hate this word, but like bimbos, people that don't really have much space, have a lot of space between here, not really a level of intelligence, not really an understanding of how to achieve great things. However, it's so far different. So, when you're celebrating diversity in women's excellence, it actually highlights the fact that not only is there diversity across things like, race, religion, size, ability, but you're also talking about encompassing how women all over pageantry can actually be excellent role models within society, and actually highlighting the fact that we are not just beauty queens. Some of us actually have really, really high paid, well involved jobs. Some of us are military, some people work within like the NHS services, some people are like really highly educated, and then you've got people who are stay-at-home mums, people who are also entrepreneurs. We encompass women as a whole, and it's not just a case of we love pageantry, but we are also really big figureheads and role models within society, and pageantry has a really important place to play in that. So it's nice to be able to kind of have or be involved with a system that encompasses that, because that leads straight into my personal ethos of trying to not only empower women through diversity, but also empower them into believing that they can achieve anything they want to in their life, regardless of the things that they have to overcome to achieve them.
Yeah, for sure. So why do you think people think about pageants being a certain way? Why do you think where do you think they've taken that narrative from?
It's archaic. It's from back in the day, when I'm sorry to have to say it, but from when our pageant was, in Butlins and things like that, where we're parading women around in a swimsuit and it's judged by a panel of men. It's all about the beauty aesthetic, and there wasn't really any real substance to why women wanted to take part in pageantry other than for the prize list. And it's evolved far more than that, and I feel like a lot of people who actually don't understand pageantry or have no interest in learning about it, or really can't be bothered really to actually find out why we take part, are quite happy to just reside themselves to the fact that it's something that is capable of being belittled. And actually it's further from that, and there's a lot more to pageantry than actually meets the common eye. So I guess it's just an outdated view, really.
And do you think back in the day they realized it, or do you think it was, back, I suppose to quote, back from archaic times when it was all male judges and all this kind of stuff? Do you think the ladies taking part thought of it in the same way, or do you just think it wasn't maybe as highlighted, as in it being a kind of, it's actually a chauvinistic kind of competition versus it actually being an empowering thing for them to take part in? Do you think that they realized that was the vibe, or do you just think that it was just the done thing back then and they just had fun and they enjoyed it, and we're kind of reading a bit too much into it?
I think that it's probably triple pronged. There's probably various different reasons why people used to take part in them. I think that perhaps back in the day it was more of an opportunity for young women to model. It was an opportunity for young women to kind of, for the same reasons that we all love the glam side of it, a chance for you to feel beautiful and for you to get up on stage and flaunt what you've got. We all still feel like that, but there's a little bit of a deeper meaning, which I don't really think was very much a thing back then. It was more for just that purpose, to just kind of find. But I didn't live in that time, so I don't know why the women did it back then, but I know why we do it now, and I understand that things have evolved, and it's not the same reasons. I'd like to think that there was a common theme as to why women have always taken part in pageantry, but without going back and asking the women who actually sat there back in the 60s doing that, how will we ever know? I would love to knock on their door one day and just say, hey, I'm Miss Great Britain from this year or last year. Why did you take part? Tell me what drove you to do that? And I kind of feel like things have changed, and why women want to put themselves into things like social media and get their stories out there and share and impart that knowledge with other people is probably a completely unknown to people that were back then. If you think about it, actually the people who have the opinion that pageantry is outdated and it deserves to be canned are actually the people from back in that sort of age. Yeah, and it's crazy to think that they maybe haven't evolved with it. And I don't know, it's still very much it's a Marmite thing, pageantry, that you either love it or you hate it, and it's difficult to change someone's opinion if they are firmly of the belief that it's not something to be celebrated. And you have to appreciate that everyone has their opinion. They may not believe it or understand it, but that's okay. We're not here to make everybody listen. We just want to make sure that we're empowering women.
For sure. So why did you get involved? So what was it? What was the trigger that? Because I think if we look back far enough to someone's journey, there's always a trigger that moves you towards perhaps a certain path, whatever that is. So what was it that drew you to your first pageant? If you can think maybe a year before you even found pageants, what was life like then? And how did you stumble upon it? Was it passed on to you by somebody else? How did you appear to find pageantry?
So for me, I've always kind of loved the idea of pageantry because it was something that was beautifully aesthetic. I kind of always looked at it and thought, wow, I'd love to be a statuesque beauty, be able to flaunt my stuff on a pageant stage, wear all the glam outfits, look beautiful. The more visual aspect of it. But however, being a woman of color and also being a plus size woman of color, looking at women who generally used to take part back in them days, really, I didn't feel represented at all. So I kind of discounted myself from ever taking part. It was always something that I'd admired, but never really felt like I had a place. And then one day I was scrolling through Twitter, actually, and I came across an advert for Miss British Beauty Curve, and they were calling out for women who are over size 14 and above to take part in a pageant. And it sparked my interest. And I kind of thought, hang on a minute, that's a thing. Like, I could go into a pageant and they're specifically calling for women who are over size 14. And at the time I was probably a 22. So I was like, hey, I've got just as much of a shot as anyone. I'm going to shoot my shot and see what happens. And I applied, not even giving it a second thought, thinking I probably wouldn't even get accepted. And actually I was accepted. and that kind of thought, it opened doors for me. It made me realize that actually there is a whole world of plus size pageantry out there, where women who look more like me are welcome within this space. And a lot of people have kind of sort of said, well, why didn't you just go into a mainstream pageant? Why did you go specifically to a plus size one? Well, I felt safe. I felt welcome, because I was with people who looked and felt like me, who understood the struggles that I was going through. So I felt like that was a good starting point for me. But I never, ever imagined that I was capable of winning, Matt. It wasn't something that I went in there thinking, yeah, I'm going to come home with a crown. I came in there thinking, wow, I've been accepted. And I was very, very young in my kind of confidence journey back then. I'd only just had my teeth done. I wasn't very confident. I was not the person that you have having this conversation with. I was a completely different person of me, a version of me. And it has taken me 8 years to kind of get to this stage where I feel like I'm 100% sure that that path was for me. I'm 100% sure that I'm a very strong believer in everything happens for a reason. There was a reason I stumbled across that Twitter advert. There was a reason I took part, and it has set me on that journey. I strongly do feel like, even my daughter, when I first took part in MBBC, she vowed she would never, ever take part in a pageant. She looked at me like I'd grown 6 heads. She was like, nope, not interested. It's not for me. I don't want anything to do with it. And this girl's flying off to Orlando like in 3 months' time to go take home an international title. Like, it has changed her as a woman. It's changed me as a woman, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of every step that I've taken. So yeah, that's what started the journey. And look, I feel like we're kind of here. It's like Pringles, eh? Like, once you pop, you can't stop.
So
It's rude.
you disappeared down the pageantry rabbit hole. So I think this is quite valid, particularly for people who are really early on, or maybe they're looking at thinking, oh, I'd really like to go give that a go. What was it that you then? How did you prepare for your very first one, and how did that differ from maybe when you went and won the Ms title a year or so ago?
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn in that span throughout your different ones? And actually, what was it that moved you from to then go and have a look at what else was out there? What else could you go in and do? Because I'm assuming your first pageant was a great experience, hence you carrying on. But as you said, you didn't want to go in because it wasn't necessarily to win; it was to go and take part because you felt accepted.
Mm-hmm.
So just talk to me about that journey of that very first one, and how you prepared for that, and just sort of, did you go down the rabbit hole, the scroll hole, looking at all the different pageants and trying to figure stuff out? What did that look like?
I went in there as a complete newbie, and looking back, I cringe at what I produced on my first attempt. And only insofar as it's nothing like I would have ever considered putting on the GB stage. So if I'm talking about outfits mainly, so yes, of course, I did go down the rabbit hole. I did spend far too many hours in YouTube kind of looking at what was actually socially acceptable on a pageant stage. And I actually ended up putting a post in like my local newspaper, which attracted me some attention from two local brands, a personal stylist, and a lady who ran a fitness brand. And they both reached out to me, and they were like, look, we're really interested in sponsoring you. We can't financially sponsor you, but we'd like to offer you our services. So the fitness brand, basically, she took me under her wing. She helped me, she basically taught me how to be a fitness instructor, and that has what's kind of started me on my journey of doing the job that I'm doing now. But then the stylist gave me her personal services. We all went shopping together. She picked things that I probably was a little bit dubious of actually wearing on the pageant stage. I'll give you an example. For my fashion wear, and this is why you have to cringe, she put me in a multicolored jumpsuit, which was like a palm print, green palm print. She then added a bright fuchsia pink like jacket over the top of it, and matching pink shoes. Now, when I look back at that picture, I'm like, why did I do that? But it obviously had never been done on that stage before. It caught the attention of the judges. It was enough for them to sit up and take notice. So whilst I'm cringing at it because it's not my style now, and I would never wear that for a pageant fashion wear, it worked at that time. So I kind of had to lean into what they were offering as a brand and how they could help me as a sponsor. And I kind of, in return, promoted their services. I became an instructor for the fitness brand, and I promoted the services of the stylist. She got more business. The other, the fitness brand obviously helped me financially in the long term, because it's got me to the stage I am now, because I'm a fitness instructor full time. Everything happens for a reason. I started that journey like that. But the one thing that I have continued with, and I started when I first did my first pageant, and I continued it all the way through, is making sure that my face is everywhere. Publicity has always been a really, really big thing for me, and I feel like that has really grown my own personal persona on social media. I have reached out to a lot of different social media outlets, a lot of media outlets, tried to get my face in as many newspapers, tried to get on TV as much as possible, just so that I can share the system that I'm representing every time I've taken part. So I've always really, really been gung-ho on the publicity aspect of it. So making sure that I'm putting up a really, really strong persona on social media, making sure that every piece of content that I put out there is proving that I'm worthy of being a queen, but also worthy of being a role model to people, and making them understand that I'm being authentic and real and raw. And that's always remained consistent. And I'm proud of that, because I feel like a lot of people back then weren't really doing it. And I feel like I was kind of a pioneer in that, insofar as other people kind of took hold of that and were like, well, if that's what the thing is supposed to be like, if that's what publicity is, or if that's what we're supposed to be doing, let's do that too. And there were other people in the space at that sort of time who were also doing it, so we all kind of did it together. And I feel like we've kind of set that bar of what you should do when you're trying to promote a brand, what you should do when you have a sash on. I wore my sash everywhere. Like, I would literally, again, I cringe at some of the things that I wore my sash to, but I would go anywhere where I had been publicly invited. I would wear my sash, and I'd make sure I had a photo wearing it. I'd make sure that I was using it to the best of my ability, but mainly to promote that system. And I feel like a lot of girls have started doing that too, and it kind of set the ball rolling. So I'm glad I did that, and I'm glad that I've continued to do that, because it is something that I know nowadays publicity isn't the be all and end all, but a lot of people do really heavily rely on social media to kind of build their own personal profiles. So I kind of think it is important when done correctly. So
And what else do you think that you brought? Because you speak exceptionally well, both in interview and this. You're an excellent conversationalist. So, did you bring that? Was that a natural thing that you had right from the start? Have you had to work on it? What else came naturally? Anything? Your walk? Did any of the pageant? Any of the pageant process come naturally to you, or have you had to work on separate elements
yeah,
along the way?
interview has always been my strong point. As a personal person, I guess you're a personal person. As a person, I've never walked into any interview, whether it be a business interview, anything. I've never walked in and not got the job, or at
Mhm.
least been offered the job. So for me, I knew how to present myself in a professional way from day dot. And I learned that through the corporate world. I didn't learn that in pageant world. I've only developed that and kind of fine-tuned it so that it's more akin to pageantry throughout my pageantry journey. So that came naturally.
Mm.
Walking did not come naturally, although I was already doing modeling. Modeling catwalk is very, very different to pageant catwalk. So I had to learn a whole different way of doing things, and I'm still learning. My pageant catwalk is so lame in comparison to the majority of people. But I think that one thing I do bring, and it leads into what we've spoken about before about authenticity. I just walk with confidence. I walk how I would normally walk, with my head held high. I'm a big girl. I have jiggly bits, especially in swimsuit, and I love swimsuit. It's my favorite of all the rounds. It gives me the ability to not only be vulnerable, because you are literally naked on stage, but
You're
you
up there
are,
and out there, aren't you? You
yeah,
are there. You know you're
exactly.
there.
You can't hide. There's no part of you hiding, but it is just a case. It's an opportunity for you to be like, hey, this is who I am. I'm real. I'm raw, and you can either love me or hate me, and that's totally fine. But if you do it with a smile on your face, you engage with the audience, you really do milk your time on stage, you're more likely to attract the attention of the important people who are your judging panel. Making eye contact with those panel is what's going to bring it home for you. If the crown is your goal, then you have to make sure you're ticking those boxes. And that's where I feel I can attach value to future contestants, is to impart that knowledge that actually what you do on stage is what gets you the crown. Yes, you can do a billion appearances. Yes, you can do a fantastic interview. But if you're lame on stage, they're not going to remember you. So you have to be the complete package.
So do you think it's looking for where your strengths are and then just making those strengths the biggest part of you,
Mm-hmm, totally.
and just
Like,
really leaning into that?
yeah, and actually that's what Saffron taught me, if I'm totally honest. Like my first go round on GB when I came third, I had interview training with Saffron, and
That's not a bad first go round though, let's be honest.
it's not a bad attempt, but I think I'd set my margin. If I didn't win the second year, she wouldn't have got rid of me. I literally would be there every year until I got the crown. But yeah, so she taught me that. She taught me to be authentic. She taught me to figure out what my strengths are, play to my strengths, find out what my weaknesses are, and find a way to spin that. So whatever your weakness is, take it, learn from it, but also find the positive in your weakness. Like there's never going to be a point where you have to turn around and rely solely on that weakness and say, that's all I've got. It's
Yeah.
never going to be that. You can grow from everything. And you know, I attribute so much of my ability to turn things around to her. She really made us think in those, you know, sessions. What was my why?
Mm.
Why did I really want it? Why did I really want to be a role model? And if it wasn't for her doing that, I wouldn't be able to talk about those things. So I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad
Yeah.
she is where she is now.
Well, you know, it's great that you know you say that, because I don't think she gets the well, certainly not to her and audible so people can hear. I don't think she gets the prop she deserves, because you know we were obviously together when she went through the pageant coach, the This Is Me coach and all that kind of stuff. And do you know what? She is a superb coach. You know, I think it's kind of a bit of a, it's not a loss because she's now obviously national director, but it's kind of a loss that she doesn't get to coach the girls anymore, because obviously she can't conflict of
Yeah.
interest. And yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a loss, because you know she is superb, and we both, what, as a guy that sort of came into it as she was handing over and all that kind of stuff from knowing nothing. And I said this, I think, when I was speaking to Charlotte, is the thing that I look within my own business. I'm able to take people on a journey and transform them into the person that they probably should be, but maybe just weren't confident enough to be, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I love seeing where the pageant thing is concerned is particularly the see the girls that come back time and time again, is the development in year to year. Because I love an underdog. You know, obviously we being national directors, we don't vote, we can't do anything where the judges are concerned, but it's really great when you look around and you see maybe someone who's come a year before or maybe the year before that, and you know they maybe started out as that, you know, there's one in every group, isn't there? There's one or two in every group where they're kind of like the wallflower. They're sort of, they want to be there, but they're a little bit nervous, they're a little bit kind of timid. And then fast forward, like first year they love it, next year they come back, and then third year, bam, they're just that journey that you witness from this kind of timid person coming through to, oh my god, they're just an absolute powerhouse. That is what I don't think people see enough of. And kind of I do want to bring this out through, you know, through the podcast, so it makes people just go and have a look, because there's so many ways and routes that people can develop. And I think this is just a fantastic one, you know, particularly for females coming through a pageant thing. I would recommend it to anyone who maybe is suffering with either confidence or anxiety, or you know, all the stuff that's really topical at the moment. Like pageantry will help with all of that. I don't know whether you agree.
I 100% agree. And that's kind of what frustrates me when you are approached by people who think that there is negative connotations to taking part in pageantry. I don't know any woman who has come out the back of a pageant. Well, and I'm sure there are women that have walked away from things, but I've never actually personally spoken to them. But the people that I've spoken to have come away from pageants with a great feeling of achievement, with feelings of increased confidence, increased personal self-worth and self-esteem, because these things are, they're meant to empower you, but also you get accosted to this community of like-minded women who all want the same thing. There isn't like this bitchy attitude that people assume is happening behind the scenes. Of course there's going to be negativity, there is in everything, but essentially it's a really wholesome place to be, and we wouldn't all continue to, let's not pussyfoot around things. It's expensive. It's an expensive habit. It is a habit, an expensive hobby to have. And we wouldn't put our time, our effort, our money, our driving miles, we wouldn't do it if we didn't absolutely adore it. And there's obviously benefits to it. And those benefits completely outweigh the cost. And that's why we continue to do it year on year. And I love a returner. Like as a judge, for me, I always have a soft spot for someone who has stayed loyal to a system until, because we all go into the pageant interview and say why you want this, why should we pick you, you all have an answer for that, but actually showing your loyalty to a system actually adds testament to your words. If you really do want something, you don't give up until you get it. And that's why I don't understand people who hop between systems just to get a crown. That's not what you said in your interview. If you came in and you told me, and I'm the judge, you told me why you wanted to win the crown for this system, and then 2 weeks later I see you've applied to a different system, it doesn't show loyalty. And unfortunately, the pageant community is small. The likelihood is you're going to get that same judge another time, or she's going to be somehow involved in another system. People don't forget, and unfortunately, social media has a way of capturing everything. We're putting all these pictures up. We know that you took part in X pageant 2 weeks ago. We're not silly, we can see that is you wanting a crown, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, if you come into your interview and say that you are loyal, you're hardworking, you're driven, and then you go and do exactly the opposite, it lays into, are you saying what you think we want to hear?
Yeah.
Or are you saying it because you're being authentic and that's really what the situation is?
And I suppose it highlights a lack of congruency, because as you say, pageant world is pretty small, although it seems to be getting bigger, which is fantastic. I suppose you just never know who you're going to be either in a lift with, or where at a bar with, stood around and what have you. And I suppose the congruency of what you say when you're on show, I suppose it has to follow through into all aspects of your life, because you can't, if masks slip, then it's easily spotted, I suppose, because you just never know. I don't think anybody would have ever thought that myself and Saffron would have ended up as national directors for Miss Great Britain. You just wouldn't, you couldn't have foreseen it. Absolutely not. And that goes the same for all the other pageants, all the other systems and all that kind of stuff. So like for me, I just love to see the congruency of, a really nice person throughout the whole, because judges, they're watching all the time, and you notice people being nice to one another, and you notice that this is a nice person, you notice that it's very consistent, and it's congruent. And I think that does go just from an outsider looking in. When I look at the participants within Miss Great Britain and the contestants, and I see them, I just really like it when I see them just be consistent in the way that they are. And I think they are. That's the great thing is that I think that system does particularly attract just congruency, and I don't know why that is. Probably because I don't know enough about other pageant systems, so forgive me on that one. But I will work my way through to other people. It's just I only know what I know from what I've seen, for sure.
I can probably explain why I think that does generate that level of congruency. It's because of the prestige of the title. Women want to be Miss Great Britain. They want that accolade. They want to it's a huge stage, and you guys have really, really done well in terms of honoring what Kate and Gemma did as directors and growing that to a different level and taking that baton and running with it and actually making it into your own thing. You have made that and continued that level of prestige, but also made it a huge production. Like there is no greater stage than that. I'm sorry, there isn't. Like you know, having watched many a pageant, I've never experienced a feeling like I have on the GB stage. And that for me is why I came back, because I wanted to be the first Miss Great Britain. I wanted to make a change to what had come before me. I wanted to allow other people to be able to feel like they could share on that stage too and feel that same feeling. So for me, it was really, really important to win, not only for my own personal achievement, but for everybody that came after me. It's not about what I can achieve solely, it's about what we can achieve together. And I'm very, very adamant that I wanted to be part of that positive change going forward. So I think there is a merit as to why people continue back with the same system, because they obviously do want that title. You're not going to give up. And that is a level of tenacity which I really, really admire in certain pageant women. If you see women that have, and Galaxy is one of the ones that I see a lot of women returning. And it's because of the prestige. It's because they want to be part of that system. They want to then go on and get the opportunity to compete internationally, because the director of the international pageant has also created a level of prestige. Being Ms. Galaxy or Miss Galaxy International is what a lot of women aspire to be, just how like they aspire to be Miss Great Britain. They aspire to be Miss England. They want to, you know, we all dream of being able to be Miss Universe, Miss World. Obviously, I'm too old, way too old and way too short to be any of those things. However, you know, if I was within that age range, I would definitely be doing those things, because they are high level accolades, and they have great, that title comes with a certain level of kudos that you can't shake. You know, really, it's something that I've taken for granted when people sort of say to me like, you're Miss Great Britain. I'm like, well, I'm not Miss Great Britain, I'm Ms. Great Britain, but it's the same thing. It's part of the Miss Great Britain umbrella, and you know, we're all part of the same family. But they're like, but you're the Ms. Great Britain. I'm like, yeah. And then I have to deep that for a minute and think, whoa, I'm Miss Great Britain. Like I did that. Like I achieved that. And I made that change. And that to me is huge. You can't take that away. And actually, it does make it very difficult to, if you win this title, it makes you kind of think, what do you do after it? Like, you know, what
I
comes
mean, this
next?
is one thing that I can personally never do, by the way.
Well, you personally, no.
No, not me. No, I'm afraid not. But uh, well, that's a good question. You know, what do you do after? Is that you know? Is it once you've hit a title like that? Is it kind of like the I've just won a world title boxing match and I'm almost, you know, ready to hang my gloves up? Is it, do I go back for that one last fight where I could get knocked out and then it's kind of wiped out my clean, my clean sheet? Or do I just
Oh,
go,
I did that.
what? That's
I
me.
did that. And Saffron did it too. We both did it. We went to a different system after winning GB and didn't walk away with the title. And there's nothing wrong with that. You have to consciously make a decision as to whether or not you want to stay competing in pageantry or whether you hang up your heels. Like for me, I've always dreamt of an international title. And with me being at Ms. age, it's very, very difficult to find a system that allows you to compete on an international stage. So for me, there's only a handful of pageants that I can take part in now, which will give me the ability to compete in a different country internationally. So whilst I've had an international title, my international leg took part in the UK. So I got chumped.
Oh,
So,
awkward.
so yeah, exactly. So I've got a fantastic international title with unfortunately no international competition, and and the system has now dissolved. So I don't have the ability to compete for that again. And I would love the chance to go and take part in an international competition, but if I'm totally honest, I have a 22-year-old daughter who's going to compete internationally in a few months. The cost of that as a family is overwhelming. So therefore, it's kind of like you have to sort of, do I sidestep now and just be a pageant mum and just kind of support her journey? And I, especially with the opening of titles like classic and like the Mrs. division and things like that, there is always going to be options for me as I get older, and there are so many women of the older categories who are absolutely storming it. I mean, come on, like look at the winners, look at Nicole, look at Kirsty. They were absolutely fantastic. They're like Bond women. Like if I could be half the women that they are when I reach their age, I'll be a happy woman. But if they can go out there doing that and they're 10 years my senior, then I'm down to continue to let her do her thing. Maya's got a few legs in her left, and before she hangs up her heels, support her as a pageant mum, save some money because it's expensive, and then maybe go out and compete internationally in a few years. Everyone's like, you've got to do something next, you've got to go back to Galaxy. I'm like, I'm just gonna wait
Yeah,
because there's no rush.
yeah,
There's no rush.
exactly.
I don't want to do something again and come out of it the other side and feel like I've undercut myself. And if I'm totally honest, with Galaxy, I shouldn't have competed this year. I was not in the right headspace to do so. And as a result, I sold myself short. I did not place where I wanted to. I really wanted to be within the top five, and unfortunately, I didn't make top five. That actually was a huge knock for me. And personally, I had to sort of think, after winning such a big title, you have a certain level of expectation personally, but from the community who assume that you're going to do well. And it's not always the case. You just have to go in there and do your best.
Controversial question.
Mm.
Do you think it's do you think it's much more difficult having had the spotlight, going to compete again with everybody knowing what you'd already won? Do you think there's an element of no, not here, hun? Or do you think that it's just really how you are on the night? What do you think to that?
Okay, so the expectation is real. Like people, the pageant community, once they've seen you win a title, they full wholeheartedly are behind you to win another. And that leaves you feeling a huge level of pressure to achieve well. And unfortunately, every pageant is different because there is a different panel of judges, and that panel of judges may not be feeling your vibe. That's nothing to discredit your competition value or how you performed. You weren't just the person who got lucky that evening. You did not tick the right boxes for that judging panel that night. That doesn't mean you're not worthy. That doesn't mean that you're not capable. And it doesn't mean that you are not deserving of the title. It just means it wasn't your time. And that actually also lays into something that Saffron told us, which is if you really truly want something, you have to never give up until you want it. And, the law of attraction and really kind of manifesting what you want. And I did that when I did GB the first time. I really did. I didn't get the place that I wanted. I came third. I was well chuffed, didn't expect to get third. But I knew from that point that I wasn't going to give up until I won.
Hmm.
And I set those manifestation wheels in motion because I wanted to make sure that I achieved that title. And I didn't give up. I went back. I looked at all of my feedback. I learned from my feedback and I grew from it. But that's exactly what I will do with Galaxy now. I'll take my feedback. I'll take my own personal feelings because I know, like I just said, I was not in the right headspace. I didn't give it my all. I wasn't on my A game. If I look back at my videos, I know that I wasn't performing my best. I know that my interview wasn't as powerful as it usually should be. And I will learn from that and I will listen to my gut and I will take that to any future competition. So I think it is really important that you understand that every night is a different game,
Mm.
and you cannot have won something and expect that because you've won it, you're going to go win another one. Doesn't
And
work that way in pageantry.
do you think that speaks to sticking with one system as well? Because obviously, once you've been, I suppose, incredibly ingrained in one system from going back year on year and sticking, then perhaps shifting systems where they may look for a different type of answer, different type of delivery. They're looking for maybe a different
Different
kind.
thing.
Like for example, Miss GB, we look. It's the ultimate girl next door.
Mm-hmm.
Not every system is going to look for the same.
No.
So once you've almost been schooled, I suppose, in one area, would you say it's difficult to then try and fit that, fit that package that you bring to stage into a different system?
It is hard, and it's one thing that any good coach will teach you how to do. Any good coach will tell you that you should, like we said earlier, you go with your strengths and you hone them in to how they fit into that system. Do your research, find out what that particular system that you are jumping ship to go to, what they are looking for in a queen. Talk to the previous queens, look at their journeys, look at the other contestants and where they've placed, look at their trajectory. What have they done to grow? There's a lot of background things that people don't think about when they are looking for another system. You need to kind of feel like you may take part in every single system, but you may not be right for that system in terms of what they're looking for as a queen. So you need to understand what they're looking for and whether or not you can add value. And if you can't add value to that system, you're never going to win it. That's how you have to look at things. It's like you can walk in, like personally, I could walk into like Miss Burger King, for example. And if I only eat McDonald's, I'm not winning Miss Burger King.
Mhm.
You know, that's just how it is. You know, you have to live and breathe that system and breathe that level of consistency and knowledge of the system and understanding what value you can bring to it. It's not just a case of saying this one size fits all. It doesn't. You can learn to be a GB girl, try and bring that to a galaxy stage, and it will fail massively because they're looking for different things. But the generic things that never change in pageantry is who you are as a person, your core values, what you can bring to the stage, and how you portray yourself. And those things don't change. But
No.
the level of how glam you go in a different system will completely be different. Like we don't in GB we don't do fashion wear like as such, so that level of high glam swishy skirts, all of that stuff isn't really akin to the GB stage. So anyone who's coming fresh out of Galaxy and straight into GB would be like completely bamboozled because it's a completely different ball game. So
Mhm.
you need to do your research and understand what they're expecting, and look at previous competitions and how they've run. Once you've done all that research, you know what to expect. You're less likely to be daunted by what you see on the stage, and you're more likely to understand what they're looking for and how you can fit into that model.
Awesome. You are a massive diversity advocate. How do you think the pageant world is doing in that arena right now?
I'm very proud of what we have achieved collectively as a community. However, I do believe that there is far, far, far much more that we could be doing. I am very, very proud of where we are, but I think that there is more work to be done in terms of diversity on a whole scale. There's been a lot of hype around race and women of color winning titles, in mainstream pageantry, which is great to see. There's been a lot of hype around, especially after Emma Looney in America went and won a mainstream pageant as a plus size woman. There's been a lot of hype surrounding those things, but there is still a lot of inconsistencies, and there's a lot of unfairness still amidst the pageant world. We still have a lot of work to do with regards to gender and equality on that level, and the discussion around whether transgender people should be allowed to compete in pageants. Um, I kind of feel like we have a lot of growth to do. The US on some ways are very, very ahead of us in terms of their inclusivity, their ability to take on different people from different backgrounds, different ages, and the spectrum of, you know, like women that have children, and you know, people from different religions taking part in pageants. The world seems to be evolving at different rates, and we all need to come to a point where we are equal, and unfortunately we're not there yet. So whilst I'm really, really proud of where we are, we've still got more work to do.
So what do you think is specifically missing? So if we're talking about UK, let's bring it down to more home turf.
Mm-hmm.
What needs to be done better?
I think the trajectory uh, of being having women of color represented, people you know, with not only visible disabilities but hidden disabilities winning mainstream titles would be great. We would love to see more of that. You know, it would be lovely to be able to get to a stage where every pageant does accept not necessarily a natural born female in a pageant, but not every system is there yet. And that's something that I feel like we need more work on. It would also be nice to have more women who are plus size taking part, more women of color taking part, because in order for them to win, there have to be more taking part. And I feel like you're never going to see them take part if you don't see them win. So it's all a bit of a snowball effect. You kind of have to be involved, you have to be in it to win it. There's no point people sort of sitting on the sidelines and saying, oh, but they never win, they never, you know, women like that, they don't win. Well, get up there and put your money where your mouth is and show them that you can be the person that can win. That's what I did. I
Mhm.
basically was like, well, I want to see that change, so I'm going to be that change. And you have to do those things. And I encourage anyone who has you know, a disability, anyone who is of, you know, also just, you know, anyone who feels like they are underrepresented in pageantry, speak louder, use your voice, use your ability and your title to promote that, so that we can truly get to a stage where we are in a much fairer and open position. um there's so much work that can be done, Matt. We could sit here and talk for a whole hour on this, but you know, there is a lot of different things that need to be addressed. I think that it's really important that we are taking into consideration that, you know, affiliations with people, like I said earlier, the pageant community is small, so having a panel of judges of people who have real strong affiliations to a lot of the contestants may be deemed as you know, a conflict of interest and things like that. So we have to get to a stage where we feel comfortable that that panel of judges has been picked from a diverse standpoint, but also are capable and able to judge impartially and fairly. And unfortunately, in the past, it's not necessarily been the case, in not specifically in our system, or, you know, just as a whole across pageantry. There needs to be more you know, accountability from the directors and the judging panel to understand that every person has a fair chance at winning the crown, and it's not down to how well you know someone or how many times you've been around to their house, because we've all socialized, we've all done that. But you hold a level of professional integrity as a judge, and if you're unable to disengage your affiliation to somebody when you're judging them, then you shouldn't be a pageant judge. That's just how it is. I have personally removed myself from being on a judging panel because I am too close to the contestant, to one contestant. I would exclude myself from the judging panel, and there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like that's a level of responsibility to my duty as a judge, to turn around and say, I know contestant X far too well, I cannot judge her impartially with all her peers if I know her that well. And I went to the director and said, look, I know X too well. Would you mind if I don't judge this year? Would you consider me for next year? And any responsible director is going to say, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I appreciate and value your opinion. Of course, you will be entitled to come back next year or next time. And thank you for being so honest, you know, of course, that's the case. But I feel like people don't don't really think like that. Being a judge is a real it's an honor, but not only is it an honor, you have a huge responsibility. You make the wrong decision and you could potentially put the wrong person in the crown, and it might not be that you have picked the wrong person and they've not done what they're supposed to, but you've discounted a whole heap of people that probably could have won the crown and done just as good a job.
Mhm.
So it's really important to be able to go into any judging opportunity and be able to be fair, you know, able to disengage your personal opinion, but also any previous knowledge that you have of that person, any affiliations you have with that person, what you've seen about them on social media, what you've heard about them from your mate. You need to be able to hold your professional integrity at the highest standard, because you have a really important job as a judge, and
Yeah.
that's really important.
But how do you go about attracting more women of color and more diverse cultures to come into pageantry? Because I guess if we look at I suppose just the cultures within the UK, there's a load of different cultures in the UK, and what we do doesn't necessarily appeal to each culture, religion taken into account, and what have you. How do we navigate that landscape and make it more appealing for for it to be more multicultural? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, don't get me wrong, it's hard. I found it within my reign, it was very difficult to get my personal voice and my story out there. I worked tirelessly with media agencies, with PR companies to try and promote my story so that it could reach more people. And what a lot of people were saying, the ones that actually did sit up and listen, was that they found it really empowering that someone that looked like me had won. And they had I not approached them, they would never have known that somebody who looked like me had even won. So it is a case of getting your story out there. And the one thing that I've seen this year, which I'm really proud of, is the contestants are doing really well with getting their stories out into the media. And there are more women this year of color, and of different denominations and different religious backgrounds, who are also taking part. And I feel like you only really get other people taking part if they see themselves represented. That's why I took part, because I wanted to be that change, but I saw myself represented up on the pageant stage back in 2014. So I felt represented, and then I followed suit. How you get more people into it is you use the people that are there who are doing it to elevate that status and basically say, well, if we can do it, you can do it too. It's not going to appeal to everyone, but for those that it does appeal to, if it piques their interest, it might just be enough to get them to sign up. And that's essentially what we want. We want more bums on seats of people from all different ages, backgrounds, abilities, everybody, because this space is a safe space for everyone, if you know if they are prepared to put the work in. And unfortunately, it's not just all about getting up on stage wearing a pretty dress and walking left and right. That's not how it works. There's more to it than that.
Oh,
So
so
yeah.
so much more, so much more.
Yeah.
And I think certainly I can't speak to other systems, but I know certainly for GB this year is looking great for a way more diverse approach for sure.
Hmm.
So I'm really excited to see how it all plays out
Yeah.
on in October. It will be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do want to dive into some practical tips, particularly geared towards. We'll do it in two sections. So geared towards the beginners, as diverse as you want to take it, and also those that maybe they've come back 2 or 3 times and are maybe starting to get just maybe a little jaded by the process, and they just need something, maybe that little gem of something from you, from someone who's got a phenomenal career in pageantry. So I'm a newbie. I'm coming to my first system for the first time. What would you advise them, or even better, your younger self, if you think back to you, what would you either do differently, or what kind of something do you think would move the needle for that first timer? Where should they put their focus?
The first thing and the most important thing in any pageant contestant's journey should be to find out why you want to do this and then authentically be yourself and do that unapologetically. And I know that sounds hokey, but actually authenticity is key to winning a title. You being your most real and authentic self is what's going to win. I made the error when I took part in GB the first year, trying to be everything that I thought GB wanted. And in so, I forgot who I was and I wasn't myself. I was a great version of me, but I wasn't truly who I am. And what I think was the real catalyst to me winning was getting up on the stage the second time and just being exactly who I am, not being something that I'm not. And I feel like actually that's a key thing that will happen, that will work for beginners and every other pageant girl, because if you're trying to conform, you're never going to win. You try to be something that you're not, and you're not being authentic. So actually being everything that you are, even the ugly, because we all have it, nobody is perfect, but embracing your flaws and really learning how to be whole and complete in who you are is a real asset. And it will really, really set you above your peers, because not everybody has that level of acceptance enabled within their ability. So it's how you unlock that and really, really hone into it. In relation to just the basic steps from a beginner's point of view, research, research, practice, find yourself a good coach, find yourself some good pageant friends who will take you under their wing, take you to all the appearances, find that friendship group who are really going to support you. You need people in your corner. Having nobody at your pageant is soul destroying. You need a little, even if it's one person coming to cheer for you in the crowd. I encourage any pageant contestant, don't do it alone. Don't ever step out on a stage where nobody knows you, because it is heartbreaking hearing a woman get up on stage and not hearing anybody cheer for her. And I encourage any pageant contestant, if you don't know that girl, you shout just as loud for her, because she has been in she's in those shoes, just waiting for somebody to validate her. And I know that's not what we're doing it for, but everybody internally needs that level of validation, especially if you're putting yourself up in a swimsuit walking out on a stage. So if you see a girl and she's looking shy, shout for her, because she's the one that needs your help. In terms of for the people that are coming back, returning year after year, and you're getting demoralized because you're not winning, my top tips would be: take your feedback from last year, really sit there and analyze it and look at it objectively from the perspective of, you didn't, as much as you believe you gave it your best shot, baby girl, you did not. There was something that you didn't do that didn't spark or ignite fire in you, and that fire is what's going to win you a crown. You have to get out there and be yourself and totally own that stage. You have to be the best version of yourself on that stage, because that's what's going to win. Your interview is really important, and any on stage question is really important, but how you really portray yourself on stage is what's going to get everybody's attention, and it's what's going to set the crowd alight. So if you can engage with that crowd and make sure that you put on a stellar performance, then you're likely to win. So analyze your feedback, grow from that feedback, but also, laid into that point that I just said, be yourself. Look back at your previous performances, watch the videos. I know they're cringy because you're like, oh my God, I slipped, or oh my God, I tripped on my dress. Who cares? Get over it, build a bridge, walk over it, try it again. You have to keep on dusting your shoulders off. There can only be one winner. And if it wasn't your night, that doesn't mean, like I said earlier, that it wasn't meant for you. It just meant that this one, you weren't lucky. Keep going. We can all evolve. We can all grow. There is no reason why that crowd wouldn't be yours. You just have to keep going. If you really, truly want something, you do not give up until you achieve it.
I think that is the perfect place to wrap it, Kat. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I don't think we've actually spoken this much at all in total, since I first met you, and it's been an absolute pleasure. We will have to do a part 2, because there's a lot of life that I think we should definitely cover based on what you sent me in terms of your background and some of the just challenges that you've had. I do want to dig into those, but I think I want to do that for a part 2 for sure. So where can people find you on social media so they can find you and follow you and watch your coming journey? And we'll also dive into mine next time as well.
That'd be great. Yeah, I'm well up for a part two because I could gas for England, as you well know. And Matt, it's been a real honor to talk to you. Actually, it's been nice to kind of sit down and talk to you. I've done it with Saffron 1,000 times, so it's nice to actually talk to you. To find me, it's really easy. You put Cat Henry into Google, and I will be the first thing that comes up. So
Perfect.
if you,
I wouldn't take that any other way.
so
You
yeah,
are who
all my
Google says
socials.
you are.
Yeah, exactly. All my socials are on Google. So yeah, put Cat Henry into Google, you'll find me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're cat_v_Henry at Instagram. Is
That's
that
right.
right? Oh,
Yeah, and
check
that's
me
the
out.
same
I've
on
not even got
TikTok.
that in my notes.
Same on TikTok, same on Twitter, if that is Twitter even a thing? X? I
X.
don't know what it is.
It's gone.
X.
It's gone all
It's
Elon
the
now.
same on Threads, it's the same on all of them.
That's the
Facebook,
best way
all of
to
it.
do it. That's a social media top tip right there. Actually, is be the same on everything. So, Kat, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've loved it. I want to get this episode out as quickly as possible because we don't really edit too much. We're rough and ready, and we just get it out there for people to listen to as quickly as possible. So, thanks all for listening. Please go like, subscribe to the podcast. You'll find us on YouTube as well. We've got nothing to hide, and guys, I really hope you've enjoyed episode 2 from season 1 with the lovely Kat Henry.